Okay, good morning, everybody. Great you're here at 9 a.m. We're very happy about this. Hope you had your coffee or like your enhancement supplements. So I'm really, really excited to talk to Christian Angermayer today. As you heard, investor, founder of the psychedelic company Apeiron, many biotech and engagements. I mean, the list is very long. But Christian, today we are here to talk about, let's say, the new age of enhancement. And we just talked about the panel before, and so I think most people here or in the world now think we are living in very dark, challenging times. At the same time, there's a lot of room for innovation. What is your take on this?
Well, my view is always like, it's wrong. I mean, we don't live in dark times. I think that's a media distortion, unfortunately, a lot of people sort of fall under of. Like, I think it's the most awesome time. Like, innovation just starts. We believe we had a time of innovation the last 20, 30 years. But like, actually, if you think about it, life hasn't changed so much. Yes, we have Uber, we ordered with our phone, but we still get here with a car. The car still has a driver, and all of that. I think when we sit here in 20 years again, and again, we just said like I was here 2008, so which is like 15, 16 years, like that feels like yesterday. I really remember. By the way, how DLD makes moments, we still talk about it. I brought my friend Peter Thiel, and you happily said, "Oh, Christian, do you want to introduce him?" I was like, "Come on, Peter doesn't need an introduction." Or it was 2009 or something, and then I said the sentence he still quotes, because I was like, what do you say about Peter Thiel in one sentence? I was like, he's the guy who revolutionized my sex life by inventing Facebook. Yeah, because truly Facebook was back then more a dating app than anything else, before Tinder and so on. And he still says this was the most funny sentence somebody introduced me. But what I want to say, like, yes, so we had this stuff, like we do dating apps and whatever, yeah, but like, I think the next, if we sit here in 20 years from now, which again, can be in a blink of an eye, I think the world, and by the way, then we're already coming to enhancements outside of us, like flying cars, self-driving cars, whatever, but especially also the world inside us, so our own sort of biology, and then for the body, and especially for the brain, will have dramatically changed to the better, which I think it's the most coolest time to live in.
So you, according to this also, you have a new company called Enhanced Games. And besides all your psychedelic engagements, do you even think we can live in these times, in these new times also, without enhancement? Because I personally don't think we can.
Well, that's a good question, a philosophical one. I think you can actually, I think I always need to be careful, because sometimes people take it more darker, and I think it's actually the opposite. It's like. But I think, like, and it's not my own thought, Yuval Harari has this thought, like, maybe we're splitting up in different, so if you would use the word race, it's very loaded in our language, is actually already a problem, by the way, so I can talk a little about that. We have the first company where we achieve telepathy from brain to computer, because language is actually a very loaded word, and then you use this word, and somebody's like, oh my God. But I think we're gonna have different groups of people, and I think you're gonna have around the globe people who say, no, I want to stay natural. And I think you will have people who say, no, I want to sort of get enhanced. Like, I think it's like, okay, if you make it a very philosophical question, so my own belief is literally every single religion has an origin story of humanity where, or most of them, yeah, where we linked to being children of God in one way or the other. Like Christianity says, and Judaism, that we were taken from the ribs of God. Not just that we were like, sort of, that he made us, but like also that we were made with something of God. Like it's the rib, like in other religions, it's a spit. In other religions, it's sort of the what is it in English, like when you, hauchen, like when you, like breath, yeah. So, but it's always a part of God. And I think a lot about it, because I'm personally very spiritual and religious, is like, what does it make us truly? Like you say that so easy, if you're religious, oh, I'm a child of God. But like children are very similar to their parents. And I think if we, in every religion again, if we attribute one thing to God, is the creation. And sort of also the desire to create. And I think this is why we're doing innovation. This is why we sort of have this drive, which maybe you can't explain. It's like, to create, and to create, again, things outside. But I think the most interesting thing in life is continuously to create yourself. By the way, now we can say that through innovation or enhancements, by the way, but this can also, there's so many other ways, but just work on yourself and don't sort of say, okay, I'm born like that or whatever, just saying what do I want to be in any sense, and create myself. And I think that is sort of a little bit the sort of divine drive in us.
So this is also, the enhanced games came a little bit out of this thinking. So maybe you can quickly talk about what, how you would describe this, and also how it's connected, also because what you just said, to ideas around Greek mythology, and interesting enough, which we also see that psychedelics kind of bringing also these things back.
Yeah. So first of all, for whoever doesn't know the enhanced games, it's going to be a sport event at the end of this year. We're announcing soon where in the world, where performance-enhancing drugs, colloquially called doping, are not just allowed but endorsed. It's not anything goes. We have 3 rules. The one is it needs to be a medical product, so something which you can get in your pharmacy. So crystal meth is not allowed. People might think about that. There was actually a German volleyballer who tried it out. I mean, it's obviously bad, but we want purity, and actually it's all about science, because if you get it in the pharmacy, if it's an FDA-approved product, then you know what it does. Second, because it's all about medical products, you have to have a doctor who gives it to you and who also outs himself as your doctor. Think a little bit about Formula One, and you have the engineer, and he says, I'm the proud engineer of this athlete. And then in order just to avoid that people go completely overboard, because by the way, in medicine, everything can be bad, because that's the first question people have, oh, is this going to be dangerous? It's not. Actually, all these performance enhancements done properly are very safe, and partially even, so you can say, proactively healthy. But obviously, if you take 50 times too much because you think it helps you more of anything, you're going to have a heart problem, by the way. But if you take 50 vodka shots tonight, you're dead. So it's not it's not a special thing about performance enhancement drugs. So what we're doing is the day before the event, we do a full health checkup of the athletes to say, look, if you have any side effects, so if you did it wrong, so to say, or if you went overboard, you will not be allowed to participate. So that's the enhanced games. Why are we doing it? First of all, it's pretty cool, I think. So I want to see it. It's always I think I try to do companies which I'm personally excited about, and I'm personally excited about it. I want to see that. But also, there is much more behind it than just a sports event. So first, I think it's the trailblazer where we can show, because a lot of people Nina, for example, talk about longevity, but I still realize it's not really tangible for a lot of people. So, but if you're gonna see at the end of this year, maybe a 35-year-old athlete breaking a world record of a former 21. Yes, with support, but a different category, but it's gonna show you that aging will be very different in the future. So it's a very sort of visible thing which shows what we're actually doing in biotech. So in our biotech division, our 2 core themes are mental health, especially psychedelics, and longevity, so how to slow down and hopefully someone even reverse aging, and by that pushing life expectancy hopefully significantly into the hundreds over time, not from one go to the other, but I think over the next 20 years, we're going to be solidly pushing life expectancy beyond 100. So one is a very visible sort of celebration of what actually biotech is doing to make it tangible for people. But then the other part is as well, it's a huge data business. That's what people don't see from the outside, because actually performance enhancements and longevity are incredibly connected. So some drug which might help a 35, 40-year-old to break a world record will help an 80-year-old to have a much better life. So we're gonna oblige all our athletes, because it's obviously anyway, again, within these parameters I said, free go, they will be permanently monitored with digital stuff, blood testing, whatever. So over time, we're gonna build up one of the biggest databases for performance-enhancing drugs, which we can use to develop also better longevity drugs. Let me give you, by the way, one example how, what is a better word, but how fucked up, media over time has distorted certain things. I think, meaning we can also talk about psychedelics, which is one of the biggest sort of political and media scams of all times. Like you had a group of drugs fully approved, by the way, by Swiss pharma companies, which can treat and to a certain extent really cure mental health issues like depression, anxiety, addiction, which is the biggest problem of our time. And for a pure political scam under Nixon, but all the media gave in, yeah, we took these super healthy group of drugs with, when done and if done properly, very, very little to no side effects, and made them illegal and demonized them, so that like over the last 30 years, psychedelics technically were ranked worse than heroin in a legal thing, which is completely insane. By the way, similar stuff happened to a word which you would now say, by the way, but when I'm now saying it, a lot of people are nodding because like, thanks to people like Anne, hopefully me a bit, like over the last 10 years, we have sort of destigmatized psychedelics. And by the way, with hard science, not because Anne and I believe in it and say, oh, this is nice, and we have an N of 1, like we had a great experience. Like we had in my company at Atai, we had more than 1,000 people in gold standard FDA clinical trials where I can just say it because it's a fact. So the same, by the way, if I say the word anabolic steroids, you're gonna be like, oh my God, like, because it got completely demonized. Yeah, but there is one anabolic steroid, yeah, which is now not available anymore, which is Anavar, which has, by the way, 2 properties in a very low thing. It's the only thing when children get burned, which unfortunately sometimes happens, is completely rejuvenating the skin in a very low dose. And I have a crazy story of a German doctor who a child came in with like half of the body burned because water boiling water was getting over it. And the doctors were so afraid of the media. Oh my God, what is if the headline is University Clinic of this town, yeah, is giving a child anabolic steroids. Although in a very low dose, it would have helped this child never have scars, and it didn't give it to him, which is, and like sort of, again, like, by the way, if women like over 60 take a tiny dose of that, yeah, you will never get osteoporosis. Yeah, by the way, another example, like just saying also like how this is connected, like when one of the biggest costs of our healthcare system is frailty. So when we get older, we lose muscle mass, yeah? So, and it's not just optics, that's another big topic, what we can make with vanity, but like, yeah, if an older person cannot carry bags, they will not go shopping alone. If an older person has not enough muscles on the arms and they fall, yeah, that's why they break bones, is because they can't sort of literally hold themselves when they fall. And all of that stuff. So around about 1/3 of the healthcare costs, which is insane, is actually, if you go down to the root cause, is attributed to frailty. Then, because when they break a bone, then they're in the hospital, then they normally decline very fast and all of that. So if we would give a low dose, a super low dose of anabolic steroids to elderly people, they would have a completely different body composition, which would avoid most of the problems which we associate with aging.
So do you think it's kind of time for like let's say health libertarianism, like in the literal word? Because I mean, it seems like people should be able to choose also their own kind of treatments or their own kind of, yeah, like let's say somebody wants to engage in longevity very early on, somebody wants to undergo a psychedelic experience to heal themselves maybe, or just to have new ideas to build a company or something. Yeah. So what do you think needs to happen to make this, let's say, to give the decision back to the individual maybe also, or to a community also?
Yeah. But I think we're living in a great time because you always have like a group of people who pushes the boundaries and then we all participate. So my view is like what we had over the last sort of 10 years, we had this whole movement of sexual identity where people were pushing, look, why do I have to accept what society is imposing on me? I want to sort of define myself. And I think that's totally okay, because I'm a libertarian anyway. Like everybody should do, yeah, as long as you don't infringe with others, that's no problem for me, do whatever you want. Yeah, but in a good way, this is now swapping or coming over to the same idea, like, yeah, meaning if we're allowed to sort of change our gender, which we're now in Germany, how could people say, but you're not allowed to define your body however you want it? Yeah, so it's completely absurd, and I think that's why sort of this whole topic of enhancements in any sense is possible. Like everybody, by the way, I put the limit on, obviously always, I'm very like medical, like in an informed way, and the way to make it informed is like you have to consult with the doctors, but doctors should be empowered and allowed to then listen to you and give you obviously all the upsides and downsides, consult you, but then sort of the ultimate decision is with you. So, and there is an important change happening. We're going to have a news with one country, hopefully the next some weeks, and then hopefully for the US very soon, because the biggest problem what we have at the moment, like we all here, but like, for example, also for our longevity business, whatever, is that it's the definition of medicine. So we don't think about it. What is medicine, by the way? What is illness? That was made in the 1920s it was called Flexner Report, because before the 1920s, there was zero rules. Like everything in America was allowed to call themselves a doctor. Everything was allowed, okay, this is a medicine. There was zero, which is obviously also bad. So the Flexner Report came, so for the time, very groundbreaking, and said, okay, there is a certain process you need to do to prove that medicine works, and there's also an education, so we define for the first time doctors have to do a certain education, So all great, but unfortunately, maybe again, for the time, very innovative, that the report also defined what is an illness. Yeah, and the illness is defined as the absence of the norm, yeah, and the negative deviation of the norm. Yeah, so for some things, that is very obvious, by the way. So if you have a virus in your body, that's bad, we want to get rid of it. If you have cancer, that's a clear negative deviation of the norm. But to show you how tricky that word norm is, at the time, being gay was not the norm, so it was defined an illness. Yeah, so and that luckily changed. So, and I think it's time to leave that aside, yeah, because at the moment, for example, when you would go to your doctor and say, I don't want to age, then a doctor would say, but that's not an illness, it's not a problem, because that's normal. Yeah, so what they all do at the moment, like if, by the way, every man over 40 should do a light dose of testosterone because that is going down, that is connected to aging. Yeah, don't boost it up, but just keep it where you were when you're 30. But if you want that, meaning doctors are starting to do that very broadly, but they need technically to lie when they give you the prescription because they're not allowed to say, I'm giving you that to feel better or to age less. They have to say, patient has no sex drive anymore, whatever. So they have to come up with a defined disease in order to be allowed to. And that will change, as I said, in one country soon, in America, hopefully also this year, because I don't want to go into any political discussions, but the new government is extremely good on that side for like sort of these pro-health, by the way, also prevention. Like, again, like why do we have our whole medical system is built on you have to get sick first and then you get treated. Yeah, most of the stuff, like especially, by the way, mental health, even with psychedelics, it's much more complicated or much harder work if somebody is already depressive to pull the person back than if we would say, by the way, my favorite thing about psychedelics is the human condition. You don't need to, if I would ask now who's depressive, it's still stigmatized, so most people who are, but statistically it's around about 15% wouldn't answer. But if I turn the answer around and say, who of you is truly deeply happy every day? Most of you would say not, because the human condition is great. No, but like, that's an achievement, by the way. But like the human condition is complicated. We all have problems sometimes. We have hard times in job, we have hard times with love, whatever. So why not doing a psychedelic session preventatively once a year, which would avoid that all these people sliding into depression do it the first place, which is much easier when you're in. So the two big things are coming is like the definition of medicine will change the next years, thanks to the US, in a more preventative way and in a more sort of libertarian way, that it's all about you to define who you want to be, physically and mentally.
So I'm a huge fan of prevention psychedelics, but to wrap this up a little bit, because we just have a little time, what is your current idea around where psychedelics are going? Because you have a company, you invested in this space already for a while, and there were many ups and downs for investors, for legalization. So what is your, let's say, idea for the coming years, how this will look like?
First of all, I believe psychedelics are extremely powerful medications. So I'm not for legalization because I think done the wrong way, in the wrong setting, again, they have not a physical risk, but like, I think they really like, let me phrase it positive, like if you look into human history, we use psychedelics since the dawn of time. Like most religions, including Christianity, you can track down to psychedelic consumption. But all of these religions, the most famous ones are the Eleusinian Mystery, a 2,000-year-long cult in Greece where all the elite in the ancient world was going twice a year. And what they said, do it twice a year. You were not allowed to do it outside of that very strict setting, which is, by the way, the shamans of our times that are psychotherapists, they were actually forbidden by death to do it outside and more than twice a year. So I think psychedelics are very powerful, but should be done in a very sort of intentional medical setting with somebody professional. I'm always saying that also because you believe what I'm saying. I think when I'm Googling now, don't try it alone, because it is important to do it with a professional. Maybe contact Anne. And in 1.5 years from now, hopefully the first psychedelic, psilocybin, will be approved, so that then, let's say in 2 years from now, in the Western world, America and US, you can go to your doctor and sort of do a trip, like a session, with them together while you're there, and then go home. So that's the first time. So in 2 years, psilocybin, our sort of number one, we have 7 psychedelic compounds in development, but psilocybin will hopefully, but it looks extremely well, the data is great, like the FDA loves it, everybody likes it, yeah, it's gonna be approved. And then I think once psychedelics are approved for, as I said, in the old sort of framework for classical problems, depression, anxiety, addiction, I think we will all gradually realize that we should maybe do it preventatively when we have a hard time. But by the way, there are many other use cases. Like another thing is, like, we are at a tech conference, and there's a story, like, so, and if I look, like, it's a very diverse in terms of age. If you're older than 30, which some people here are, your brain starts aging. We associate brain aging always with very late in your 80s, you have the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. But already at 30, every single year, your brain is closing down a bit. And that is not, now that I say that like fluffily, we can see that on an MRI. If I would take a person over 20 years from the age of 30 and do an MRI every year and give that person, while it's in the MRI, the same math problem or a book to read, whatever, you would realize that the brain is literally lighting up less. Yeah? So it means you, in German you say, man denkt immer in den gleichen Bahnen, you think in the same structures and your creativity goes down and whatever. So that's already not nice, by the way, but it's associated to another big problem, is your openness to learn new things, and both your inclination, but also really your ability to learn new things goes down. Which, by the way, is sad. Yeah? Especially sad in a time where longevity goes up. So we have more time to enjoy that life, but for many people, the older they get, it gets harder to fit in a world which is permanently changing. So coming back to the beginning of our talk, I think the next 20, we just have seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of the speed the world is changing, which will make it harder and harder for people over 30, and the older you are, the harder it will get, to fit in that world. Let's make an extreme case. No, by the way, and people know, you totally, and you can train it. Yeah, by the way, there's definitely genetics. So I'm sponsoring a lot of research on that question, like why is this happening to some people less than others? Yeah, there's a genetic part. There's also a discipline part, by the way. It's not about psychedelics all the time. Like by the way, by DLD itself, and most likely them, by enforcing practically yourself to deal with new things all the time, you can gradually slow that down. But psychedelics are practically the 100% boost. So because what happens is, we always talk about the trip, like the spiritual, psychological, mystical experience people have when they take enough psychedelics, but there is a secondary effect. The weeks, months, and partially years after, we can see in the MRI that after the consummation of psychedelics, your brain is literally growing a little bit in size, so in the number of neurons and everything, but especially in the connectivity between the parts of your brain. So literally, and not while you're doing it, like the weeks and months later, a brain of a person who has done psychedelics looks like a young brain again. Yeah? And again, this is important for so many things, but maybe for one, because you mentioned in your intro speech, AI and robotics. Yeah, I believe personally that over the next 10, 20 years, we're gonna lose or a negative word, but most of the jobs we're gonna vanish. We will not need human labor anymore. So that will pose an incredible, complicated question to society, because we have attached over the last 8,000 years the value of a person to the job that we're doing. That is, by the way, but it's wrong. If you go, or it's wrong, but it's not. We had another time, if you go back more than 8,000 years when we were hunter-gatherers, like hunter-gatherers societies which are still existing need around about 2 hours a day, maybe 3, for making a living, hunting and gathering. What do they do the rest of the day? They have sex, they sleep, and they tell each other stories. So that's, by the way, why we're so gossipy. Yeah, we're by design, yeah, human groups bond together with gossip. So, and I think we're going to go back into actually, by the way, all religions, coming back to that, see that as the golden age, when humans didn't have to work a lot and were truly humans and truly social. So I think the outcome is great of that, but the transition will be incredibly complicated because we're so attached to that, my job is my value. So, and I think psychedelics are, because one of the very core things they're doing, they really show you who you really are, like what is your real value beyond things you might attach to it, your ego. So I think they are the one and only transition tool we have to sort of soften or transition our society in a post-AI society.
Totally agree. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for your time. See you soon.